The beautiful dining room in the Obi family mansion in Lekki, Lagos, should have been filled with laughter and joy. Instead, it became the place where Mrs. Ngozi Obi poured a pot of dirty dishwater over a woman in a faded dress and worn slippers. The woman her daughter Amaka had left 6 months ago, calling her a failure, a nobody, a poor church rat who could never give her the good life she deserved. What Mrs. Ngozi did not know, what none of them knew as Amaka and her new boyfriend Colonel sat there laughing at the shame, was that the quiet woman now dripping with dirty water and vegetable peels was actually Chidinma Nwankwo, the secret owner of Nwankwo Group, the massive company that employed every single member of the Obi family. From Mrs. Ngozi's senior manager position to Amaka's brother Chidi's job as a supervisor, to Mr. Obi's director role, the company that paid for this very house in Lekki, these expensive clothes, this imported wine they were drinking while mocking the woman who signed their salary every month. But Chidinma said nothing as the water dripped from her natural hair. She just smiled that strange, calm smile that made Mrs. Ngozi's stomach suddenly feel tight with fear. What was she planning? Why was she not shouting or crying? And why did Amaka's face suddenly turn pale when Chidinma pulled out her phone and made one quiet call? "Hello, Obiajili," Chidinma said softly into the phone. "Yes, it is time. Start the Obi family protocol we discussed. All of them. Right now." "Yes, I am sure. Thank you." She ended the call and looked at each of them slowly. Mrs. Ngozi felt her hands begin to shake. Something was very wrong. This was not how a poor, useless woman was supposed to act. This was not the reaction of someone who had just been publicly shamed. Then the phone started ringing. First Mr. Obi's phone, then Chidi's phone, then Mrs. Ngozi's phone. All three of them stood frozen, staring at Chidinma, staring at Amaka who had started crying, staring at each other. Mr. Obi answered his phone fast, and Mrs. Ngozi watched her husband's face change from confusion to shock to complete horror. "That was human resources," Mr. Obi whispered, his voice shaking. "They said I am fired. After 25 years of working for Nwankwo Group, I am just fired. They said the CEO personally ordered it." Chidi's call ended, and he stared at his phone like it had burned him. "I am fired too. They said me, Dad, and Mom. All three of us. Starting immediately." Mrs. Ngozi felt the room spin around her. This could not be happening. This could not be real. But then Chidinma spoke, her voice still calm, still quiet, still carrying that terrible power that Mrs. Ngozi had completely missed for 3 years. "You have 24 hours to leave this house. It is company property. Since you no longer work for my company, you can no longer live in my house. Your company." Mrs. Ngozi heard herself say, but her voice sounded far away. "Your house." Chidinma smiled again, and this time there was something sharp in it. "Yes, Mrs. Obi. My company. My house. My money that has been paying your salaries and buying your fancy clothes and expensive cars for years. I am Chidinma Nwankwo, owner and CEO of Nwankwo Group. The same company where your entire family works. Or rather, used to work." The room exploded with shocked voices. Amaka buried her face in her hands, crying harder. Colonel, the new boyfriend, stood up so fast his chair fell over. Mr. Obi sank into a seat, his face completely white. And Mrs. Ngozi just stood there, the empty pot still in her hands, realizing with growing terror that she had just poured dirty water on the most powerful woman in Lagos. The woman who had been married to her daughter. The woman who owned everything they had. But the question that made Mrs. Ngozi's blood run cold was this: if Chidinma was so rich and powerful, why had she pretended to be poor? Why had she let them insult her for 3 years? Why had she married Amaka at all? And most terrifying of all, what else was Chidinma planning to do to them? Mrs. Ngozi's mind raced back to 3 years ago, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. She remembered the day Amaka brought Chidinma home for the first time. They had met at a women's conference in Port Harcourt, and Amaka had been so excited, so full of joy. "Mommy, I met someone special," Amaka had said, her eyes shining. Mrs. Ngozi had been happy at first, happy that her daughter had found love. But when she saw Chidinma, her happiness faded quickly. Chidinma had arrived in an old Toyota Camry that looked like it had seen better days. She wore a simple Ankara dress, nothing fancy, nothing expensive. Her shoes were clean but clearly old. She carried no designer bag, wore no gold jewelry. She looked ordinary, plain, poor. Mrs. Ngozi remembered feeling disappointed. Her daughter, her beautiful, educated daughter who worked at a big company, had chosen this. What does she do for work? Mrs. Ngozi had asked Amaka later that night. She works in business, Amaka had replied vaguely. She manages some things here and there. That answer should have made Mrs. Ngozi suspicious, but instead, she just felt more disappointed. Manages things here and there sounded like someone without a real job, without a real future. But Amaka was in love, and despite Mrs. Ngozi's concerns, the relationship moved forward. Chidinma visited often, always bringing small, thoughtful gifts. A book for Mr. Obi, homemade chin-chin for Mrs. Ngozi, a football jersey for Chidi. Nothing expensive, but always kind. And she was so respectful, so polite, so patient with all of them. Even when Mr. Obi made comments about people who don't know how to make real money, Chidinma just smiled. Even when Chidi laughed at her old car, saying, "Sister, when will you upgrade to something better?" she just smiled. Even when Mrs. Ngozi said things like, "I hope you are planning to improve yourself so you can take care of my daughter properly," Chidinma just smiled and nodded. That smile. That same smile she had given them tonight before making the phone call that destroyed everything. The wedding had been small, too small for Mrs. Ngozi's liking. Chidinma had insisted on paying for everything herself, and Mrs. Ngozi remembered being embarrassed by how simple it was. No live band, no expensive decorations, no society photographers. Just a small church ceremony and a modest reception. "Is this the best you can do?" Mrs. Ngozi had whispered to Amaka before the wedding. "Are you sure you want to marry someone who cannot even afford a proper wedding?" But Amaka had been firm. "I love her, Mommy. Money is not everything." Those words felt like a cruel joke now, standing in the dining room with dirty water stains on the floor and their lives falling apart. For 3 years, Chidinma had lived with Amaka in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Suralaya. Nothing fancy, just basic furniture and simple living. Chidinma drove that same old Camry. She wore simple clothes. She never went to expensive restaurants or bought designer bags. And slowly, Amaka had started to change. Mrs. Ngozi had watched her daughter become more and more unhappy. "Mommy, I am tired," Amaka had confessed 6 months ago. "All my friends have husbands who take them on vacation to Dubai. Their husbands buy them new cars and jewelry. But Chidinma, she just wants to stay home and read books. She does not care about the nice things in life. I feel like I am stuck, like I am not moving forward." Mrs. Ngozi had encouraged her daughter then. "You deserve better, my dear. You deserve someone who can give you the life you want. Life is not about love alone. You need comfort, security, nice things." And so Amaka had filed for divorce. Chidinma had not fought it, had not begged, had not cried. She had just signed the papers quietly and moved out of the apartment.